Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I'm really glad you could be here. And today we're talking about really how to save money in something that you don't normally think about, which is really how you can prevent insurance frauds. Now, this happens way more often than what you know it does and think it does. And today we're going to talk about how to prevent it. And we're also going to talk about what happens if you're actually a victim to these type of things. We got a lot to cover on this topic. To dive in, we're going to actually be meeting with Galen M today. Now, Galen is actually the owner of Insurance Claim HQ, which is a property casualty insurance attorney operating in more than 7 states, including Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Florida, and Mississippi. Now, through property casualty insurance claims, Galen and his team have helped over 800 families rebuild their homes and businesses. They have dedicated their practice to fighting for the rights of policyholders when they experience a loss due to fire, flood, hurricane, or from the insurance company not keeping their word. Now, Galen has been rated a Super Lawyers Rising Star and has been voted one of the National Trial Lawyers Top 100. And to learn more about how Galen and his partner, Alexandra Shanara, probably pronounced it correctly, but I was as close as I could get, can help protect your family and business property from disaster, please visit their website directly, which we'll talk about as we wrap up the show today as well. insuranceclaimhq.com. Galen, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ty.
So how often does this happen? We don't oftentimes think about these type of things, especially when it comes to insurance fraud. So in your experience, how often does this happen?
Yeah, unfortunately, it happens a lot. So when we think of insurance fraud, what we typically think of is someone saying their car was stolen when it wasn't, or someone saying they had a big flat screen TV when they had an old tube television from the 80s. And that is insurance fraud. And that's a felony in pretty much every state, and you can't do it. But that's not really that common. You know that's a felony, so you're really taking a risk for money. And usually it's not enough money to really pay off for the risk versus reward. Where insurance fraud is actually more common is on the carrier side, but they're both equally insurance fraud. Insurance fraud, kind of by definition, is making an intentional misrepresentation or lying in order to achieve proceeds in an insurance claim or minimize proceeds in an insurance claim. And when an insurance company lies or falsifies documents or creates false things so they can save money on an insurance claim, they are committing insurance fraud the same way you are if you lie about what is in your home after it burns down. It's really no different. And unfortunately, ever since kind of the late 90s, and it's kind of evolved since Hurricane Katrina back in 2005, with it really peaking during Hurricane Sandy up on the East Coast, this is just so common after major disasters.
So oftentimes we think about insurance fraud as committing fraud on the insurance company. What you're saying is, look, what's even more common is the insurance company kind of defrauding us because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So give me an example of this.
Yeah, so after Hurricane Sandy, for instance, there were a lot of engineer reports that basically said that wind had not caused damage to the homes or could not have caused damage to the homes as a result of the wind speeds, right? And these reports were signed and they were stamped by engineers, and in the reports, they said there was an inspection, and it was discovered that across hundreds, if not thousands of these homes, no inspection even occurred. No one actually went to that property. And ultimately that led in an executive from an engineering firm that works for insurance companies getting taken out of their building in handcuffs. Congress ended up opening up a special committee to review all of the Hurricane Sandy claims and reopen any claim where it was found that there was any fraud or mishandling. So, there's different levels, right? An insurance company not paying you what you want is bad, and you should absolutely do something about it. But that's not fraud. It's when it gets to the level of lying. So for instance, that was Hurricane Sandy. Hurricanes are like the easiest because there's wind stuff, right? So Hurricane Laura down in Southwest Louisiana in 2020, all of a sudden, all these engineer reports come out saying that soil has shifted and that these houses aren't actually messed up because of the hurricane. Just magically, the day of the hurricane, the soil below the home gave out, right? That is fraud. When you know what you're saying is not true, and you're falsifying information to support your position, Whether you're on the carrier side or the homeowner side, you are committing fraud. Same thing. If you go hire an engineer to make a false report to help you as the policyholder, that also is fraud. You cannot do that. You do not falsify evidence. You do not falsify information. That's like basic human decency 101, but it's also insurance fraud.
So it's interesting because what you're saying as a layperson, I wouldn't know, right? I wouldn't know that the reports they're looking at are fraudulent or fake. So how do I know? Like, how do I first get the inclination that what I'm looking at might not be right? There might be potential fraud. There's something at least worth looking deeper into.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to plug them per se on this thing, but there's a group called the American Policyholder Association. And they are probably the only organization, I would say, in the country that I can think of at least, that's dedicated to stopping insurance fraud on both sides. They don't want any insurance fraud at all. And members of the public, I think, can join for free. So, and that's why I bring it up, is because I've been a member for years, but as a professional, like I have to pay, et cetera, et cetera. But they give you like all these free tools. Like, for instance, there's an engineering research and complaint portal. There's like resources like how to spot insurance fraud. There's all these really cool things that they have, right? And I think that's, a good place to start. But there's also some just like kind of general tips, right? So if you go through, the first thing I'd say is you don't want to be an easy victim, right? So you want to be an educated consumer. You want to understand the claims process. You want to understand the role of all of the parties involved. After you're dealing with a disaster, there are all these different people that show up from the insurance company and from other companies to help. You want to ask questions. You always want to be cooperative, but you want to insist on like transparency and fair treatment, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the first thing I would do.
Now, is there a site you can go to for that?
Yeah, it is apassociation.org. A as in alpha, P as in Polly, association.org.
I'll put that on the show resources page for everybody. Okay.
And they're a great group, and anyone can join for free, I think, as long as you're a consumer. If you're in the insurance industry, I think they want you to pay something. But if you're just joining to kind of learn more and protect yourself in the case of a disaster, I'm pretty sure you get all of their resources for free. There's no cost or anything. So that's the first thing I do. I'd also, just understand that the insurance company's interest is adverse to yours. Insurance companies spend billions of dollars a year advertising that you're going to be well taken care of. They literally all have slogans talking about how well they're going to take care of you, how they're going to treat you like people that live next door. I can't use the slogans, how they're going to treat you like they're holding you nicely. But you need to understand that like insurance claims are a zero-sum solution, right? If you get paid $1, the insurance company loses $1. And that can sometimes motivate people to ignore damage or change reports to like tell the boss what they want to hear. Do I think people are sitting in a boardroom at an insurance company, wringing their hands, figuring out how to commit fraud to not pay you your claims? I do not. What I think pressure in any corporate environment to keep the bosses happy, and human nature sometimes throws out morality for the sake of productivity or the sake of keeping their job. Because if I'm an insurance employee making these types of decisions, maybe I've decided my livelihood is more important than your car or your windows or your door. It's just the way human nature works, right? I think you also need to understand that the people that the insurance company sends out are not necessarily the insurance company's direct employee. So you want to find out who they are. You want to get copies of IDs, take photos. It is reasonable when someone comes to your house to say, I need to take a photo of your ID and your business card, right? So you know who these people are, because the reality is if you're the victim of fraud, the burden of proof is probably going to fall on you, because if until you've listened to this, you probably did not even realize that insurance companies could commit fraud. And then, I'd say the next biggest piece of advice is organization. Like, keep copies of everything, save everything, record calls if it's legal in your state to record calls, videotape inspections when people come out. Make sure that you're keeping good records for your own claim so you're protected, because that's really what it's about with fraud, is protecting yourself from being a victim. And easy victims are often the ones that fall victim to fraud. If you're a hard victim, they can tell you're organized, they can tell you're on top of your stuff, you know what you're doing. It's a little harder for them to take that extra step to hurt you.
Are the things that you should do in the beginning when you file a claim? to be able to make sure you have or limit your chances of it becoming fraudulent?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, the first thing you want to do to prevent fraud in any claim is you want to be open and honest, right? Like right out of the gate. There's this doctrine in for lawyers called unclean hands, right? And we say you don't want to have unclean hands when you're going after someone, but I think that applies to life. You want to have your halo on straight. You want to be a good person. You don't want to lie about anything. You want to make sure that your claim is accurate to the best of your ability. And if that means hiring people to tell you what was damaged by what, go do that. Okay. A lot of those people won't take money up front, but make sure your claim is fair and it's honest, because you're going to reduce the incentive for someone on the carrier side to be dishonest. But beyond that, the biggest prophylactic thing you can do is realizing that unfortunately it's an adversarial process and documenting it the way you would if you were in any kind of arm's length negotiation or dealing with anyone you don't really know.
Makes sense. So a lot of it's documentation. So anything you could do, not just on your end, if I'm putting in a claim, I don't want that to be fraudulent, but anything I could do to have a better chance of getting my claim actually paid versus being the victim of fraud on the other end when I submit the claim and they deny it for any of these known number of different reasons.
Yeah. So the best thing you can do to get your claim paid, in my personal opinion, is to hire a professional. It doesn't have to be a lawyer. We obviously are lawyers and we do this work and this is what we do, but there are other professionals too. They're like public adjusters, for instance. Those are people that help advocate in most states. They help you with the insurance company. They make your claim, they document it. You're not equipped to do it yourself, right? Insurance companies are huge. They've got a lot of money. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, there's a lot of people that are working on your one claim. You have a field adjuster, that's someone that comes out to your property and looks at it. You have a desk adjuster, that's someone that's kind of pulling the strings. They have managers, there might be engineers, there might be like consultants, right? They have a team of people. And it's amazing how many people look at me and say, oh, I can handle my claim myself. And I kind of think, all right, I mean, that's like showing up to a football game where the other team has 11 players and you're there alone. But if that's your choice, like that's fine, right? So I would say that's the other biggest thing you can do on the front end is just hire help. It doesn't look guilty. It doesn't look bad. It doesn't look like you have something to hide if you go hire like a lawyer that actually does this work, or you go hire like a public adjuster or someone that is a professional in insurance claims. That's normal. And that's honestly the best way to increase your chances of getting paid and getting paid quickly and getting paid the right way. And then that way, if the insurance company does something untoward or inappropriate, that professional should be able to help you catch it and take appropriate action to stop it.
So do you recommend that with all claims? Like, let's say I'm in a car accident, for example. Do I hire somebody at that point to handle that claim with my insurance company?
Yeah. So I don't even really do car accidents. And I'll tell you, I would never, ever, ever not hire a lawyer for an insurance claim at all. I would always have a professional for any type of insurance claim I had, absent it being so insignificant that I just don't care what the outcome is, right? Kid throws a football through my window. It breaks my window. My window is going to cost $100. My deductible is like 50. Maybe I don't hire someone because it's just not worth it, right? But honestly, if I care about the outcome at all, I'm going to hire a professional to help me with an insurance claim, because you can be guaranteed that they have hired plenty of people to help them.
So let's say I don't do that. Let's say, because you and I both know most people don't do that. Mm-hmm. So let's say now I come in, I submit a claim, homeowners insurance, let's say homeowners insurance, right? And the claim is denied for things that I obviously think should be covered. What's the next step? What do I do now? Most people are going to try to argue with them and escalate to the actual company to get resolution. Like, what do you recommend in that situation?
Yeah. So if you're going to handle it alone, and you're at that point, you really, once you know you're not getting paid, you really need to get someone involved. But if you're not going to, it's your obligation. If you open just about any insurance policy, they have duties and you have duties. And this is where people get confused, because they think they can handle their claim themselves, and they've never even opened their sometimes 100+ page policy. Sometimes it's only 20 or 30, and they've never even read. It literally says your duties after a loss, : and then there is a bulleted list of things that you are required to do. Sometimes there are timelines that you can miss and lose your claim. So what you really need to do if you're handling it yourself and they haven't paid you is you need to open that policy. You need to find that section of your policy, and you need to make darn sure that you have done every single thing on that list. That's usually going to consist of getting estimates, figuring out what each cost is going to be, submitting photos. There might be something called a proof of loss you have to submit. Sometimes you even have to go in and give a sworn statement, right? But there's a whole list of obligations you have. And that's why I really recommend people hire someone, is because they know what those obligations mean and how you execute that. But if you're going to do it alone, you need to methodically go about this. Someone called me last night. They're not going to be a client of ours. It doesn't make sense. It's not a good fit. And they wanted to know how to write a proof of loss. They wanted to know if I could send them a form. And I said, I don't have a form for you. And he kind of laughed and said, you're one of the biggest insurance law firms in the country. How do you not have a form proof of loss? And I said, because here's what I do. I open your policy. I see what it says you have to put in that proof of loss, and I type it in. Just go do that, right? It's not that it can't be done by an individual, but you have to think in that way to get it done, I guess is really my point. So if you're doing it alone, that policy is your guide. It is your Bible for that insurance claim, and you need to read it from front to back and almost have it memorized.
Yeah. And it makes sense. And unfortunately, like I said, it's, I think, it's easier to sell painkillers and vitamins, right? And so a lot of people, even though they should get help, they don't get help till they need it, right? They don't get help till the claim gets denied. And that's when they come, probably, I imagine, in your world, raising a red flag. But what do we do if we take 10 steps back there? Like, what should we be looking at in insurance policies to begin with when we're going out to get them? Auto, home, like what kind of things and provisions, what do we look at to make sure we get the right policy from the beginning?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because that's kind of my pet project, right? Anytime I do talk, I try to get this in at some point. Americans suck at buying insurance. They just do. And I'm the most pro-American person in the world, but we suck as a country at buying insurance. We're terrible at it. When's the last time you bought a car, Ty?
Last year, about 9 months ago.
Okay, what'd you get, if you don't mind me asking?
I got a McLaren MP4 and then a Mercedes S-Class.
So we all knew Ty's like not buying cars with the rest of humanity anyway, right? But let's talk about it. That McLaren, that must have been an awesome achievement for you. Talk to me through that thought process of getting a McLaren.
Well, I have my assets like that make money for me. So, I'm looking at a lot of things. First of all, something I like that's unique, something I like that makes me feel good when I drive it, convertible, exotic. But then I also want something on the rental market that I can put out there and be able to get a positive return on.
Okay. Did you do any market research to figure out what that return was going to look like?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you get to test drive it at all?
I didn't test drive it. I don't buy my cars locally. All my cars of the last many years are usually bought over the online and then shipped to me.
That's awesome. Had you ever been in a McLaren before?
Yes.
Okay.
But never driven one.
Well, yeah. I mean, and look, we can't. So it is interesting. It's a good point. These days, with the way the market works, we don't always physically see or touch something before we buy it, right? That's
right. But it brings up a good point, because take it back. I bought a truck in New York, and the guy even told me, the sales guy, no rust, I just sold that thing for a massive loss because rust had grown to the point where it went through the frame of the metal. So a lot of risks in buying when you don't physically see something. Just speaking to that.
Yeah, and there's always a risk. But even that McLaren that you didn't test drive, you did more background due diligence than 99% of consumers do before buying insurance on their home, which for most Americans is their single greatest asset. That is wild to think about.
It is, and I never even looked at the insurance. Like it's an afterthought when you get a car. Like I'm like, oh, I forgot to get the insurance, right? And then I just call my insurance company and then just take whatever they tell me I should take.
Isn't that wild? I mean,
it is crazy if you think about it. Like I don't even pay any attention to insurance. Although like you said, when you buy a home, think about all the research that goes into buying that home.
Oh yeah, you're doing inspections, there's appraisals, there's even other people, right? Because your bank is interested in this as well, making sure that this is a good investment for you. And for most Americans that are not necessarily high net worth individuals, but even high net worth individuals mess this up all the time, okay? Their home is going to be their biggest asset. their only asset
Sure.
for some of them. And if they lose that home, they will be left with a massive liability vis-a-vis their mortgage and no ability to get back on their feet. It's wild, right? So, and we see this in foreclosure crises, mortgage crises. Anyway, what my point is this: the way that insurance purchasing works is this: you go online or you walk into an agent's office and you say, I have a house, or I'm buying a house. I'm spending $300,000 on it and I need insurance. And they usually hand you back a piece of paper or they talk to you over the phone or whatever, but the process is the same. There's like 3 options. I got a deductible of 1,000. I got a deductible of 5,000. I got a deductible of 10,000. Here's your insurance that covers the house. Check here, sign here, initial here. Tell me which one you want and pay me. Right. And that's how insurance is bought. What less than 1% of consumers in the United States do is say, okay, I like this one with the $1,000 deductible or whatever deductible, doesn't matter to me, but I want to see the policy. I want to see what it covers. I want to see what it excludes. I want to see what I have to do. I want to see what you guys are going to do, how fast you're going to pay me, what the process is. No one says that. They just say, oh, it's Allstate or it's State Farm or it's Farmers or it's Progressive. They're going to treat me great. They're not going to treat you great. They have different levels of policies too, right? There's a policy that I was just looking at. It's called the Chubb Masterpiece policy. I think it's the best policy in the country, right? Any high net worth individual should look at it. And Ty's kind of smiling because he's got it. But
I like the name Chubb Masterpiece.
It's
policy.
A good name.
Whoever named that, I love that person.
That's great. It's got more coverage and less exclusions than any policy I've ever seen. But on the other hand, the average homeowner's policy from the big insurance companies, they have more exclusions every year than they had the year before. Pipe bursts. Anyone remember Texas freezing over last year? Absolutely freezing over. Most people didn't have insurance to cover that because the insurance companies thought that would happen in Texas and wrote in pipe burst and pipe freeze exclusions into their policies.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that. So then what happens in those situations? Nobody gets paid for all that damage.
Yeah, you pay to fix your house out of your own pocket, and hopefully you have enough income, post-COVID to make sure that happens. Otherwise, real estate investors get rich, right? Because they're buying these damaged houses at a discount.
So you should get the policy. You should look it over. But in a situation like you just described, I wouldn't even think about that, right? Like I wouldn't even think about now, obviously, after the fact, we're like, oh, you should have had insurance for pipe burst, right? But I wouldn't even think of that, right? The same as in Florida where I am. There's people that don't even think about flood insurance because they're nowhere in an area that would typically flood. And then their house gets flooded, right? You see that where you are all the time. I see that where I am all the time too. So what do we look for? If we get the policy, if we're smart enough to do that and start looking through it of coverage of what's covered and not, like what kind of red flags are we looking for?
Yeah, so you do 2 things. Before you even look at the policy, you make a list of the types of things that you think happen in your region, right? Or could happen in your region. And you write those down somewhere. And then you make a list of what it's really going to cost. If I took a match to your home right now and burned it down completely to the ground, and including all your stuff inside your home, what would it really cost, right? And you need to know that. You do not want your insurance agent to pick that number for you because in most states, they have no liability for getting that number wrong. You bear the risk, right? And people underestimate, by the way, their contents all the time. You spend your entire life acquiring your stuff, right? And yet you pick like a value that's like a quarter or half of your home. You probably have more stuff in your home than the value of your home if you're an average American. We're a consumer environment. That's just what we do. So make sure you've got both of those coverages appropriate, right? And then I guess I lied. There's 3 things. Ask yourself, how much would it cost me to live if I burned down my house and had to rebuild? Would I need 6 months? Would I need a year? Would I need a year and a half, right? And that's called additional living expense. So you've got those 3 things written down. And now you're looking at the policy and there's usually a list of exclusions. They're usually endorsements. What usually happens is you get this policy that looks like it pays for almost everything. And then at the back of the policy, there's endorsements that start chipping away at your coverage and getting rid of it, right? So you've got this list. And I think you sit down, I know you sit down and you carefully walk through with your agent, explain this to me. Tell me what this means. I want to know what this means. It should take you an hour and a half, 2 hours to sit with an agent and go through a policy before you purchase it. But no one does that. The agents don't want to do it because that's just less money for their time, right? If they can get you to sign one page and make their commission, then why would they spend 2 hours with you? Makes no sense. So the agents don't want to do it, and you don't want to do it because you see it as like this perfunctory, like almost ministerial task that carries no real consequences, but it does. It carries massive consequences.
So if I do that, and let's say pipe bursting is one of my things that I want covered and they don't cover it, what happens then? Do I do a State Farm going to give me a different policy that gives me coverage there? Will they add coverage to that policy? Do I have to look through another company? Like if I don't have something that I want or need, then what's my next steps?
Yeah, the answer to all those questions is yes, right? So depending on the carrier, they may offer a different policy that covers those things. They may offer an endorsement that covers those things. If your agent is what we call an independent agent, meaning they shop out to multiple companies, they also have the option of going to a different company. There is almost no disaster of which I am aware that is 100% excluded in the marketplace. And what I mean by that is not a single carrier offers coverage for that thing. And look, you might decide not to get it, right? You might want pipe bursts, and you might decide that it's priced out of the market in your specific area because what it's going to cost you to get it just isn't worth it. But you're making an economic decision. You're a good consumer because you know you're taking that risk. So first of all, you're going to be a little more paranoid when people start to talk about a freeze coming. You're going to make sure you get styrofoam around all your spigots. You're going to make sure you keep water running. You're going to keep that heat up. You're going to be massively paranoid because you know you're not covered. And you knew you took that financial risk. I could save $2,000 a year, but I wouldn't have pipe burst. That might equal out in the long run, but you know what you're doing. And that's the problem, is American consumers have no idea what they're sacrificing for the money they're getting. In Florida, for instance, there's something we just saw called a public adjuster endorsement. It literally says that for part of your rate, they're giving you a discount of probably $100 a year. You will not go hire a public adjuster to help you with your claim if the insurance company doesn't pay you. You're giving that up. You have no idea.
It's crazy.
Yeah, they're telling you in advance that they are going to screw you, and then they're giving you, $100 a year off, so you won't go hire someone to tell them that they screwed you. It's wild, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's so much of the stuff they can add in because nobody's reviewing the policies.
Yep, they get away with murder because consumers are not good. We depend on our state departments of insurance to protect us, but they're always walking a political tightrope. Some of them are elected. Some of them have to deal with the insurance lobby. It's an imperfect system. The way to keep insurance companies accountable and write good, fair policies is for you to be a good consumer and treat it like any other important financial purchase.
Makes a ton of sense. Great advice. Now, kind of walk through being able to pick the right policy, what to look for, what to do before you file a claim, people to talk to, and kind of some of the things that happens is more fraudulent. What do you think are coverages what kind of insurance should people have that they don't, whether it be business or individual? There's all kinds of insurance out there. What kind of stuff do you think? Like, I'll give you an example, right? I know people that lose everything with no renter's insurance, and renter's insurance is like stupid cheap. Like, it's some of the cheapest insurance you can get out there. I'm like, why wouldn't you have that? So what other kind of insurance are you just like, I cannot believe that people do not have this kind of coverage and they should?
Yeah. So in order, the number one offender is renter's insurance. It's a no-brainer. The renters are more at risk for massive economic loss than anyone else, and they need to have insurance. The next one is small business owners. I'm amazed at how many small business owners, in order to make ends meet, and look, if you don't know how to make ends meet, Ty can show you how. He'll go get you the credit you need to make it happen, but get the right insurance to make sure that something stupid does not sink your business. And by the way, you're a small business owner, so everyone listening knows there's a 50-50 chance you do not have your company set up the right way to protect you from personal liability. So for God's sakes, get the insurance you need. If someone gets hurt, if you suffer an interruption period, whatever happens, to make sure, and that's going to be multiple policies probably, right? But you need to sit down with a business insurance agent and make sure you have everything you need. Do not skimp on insurance for your business, because it is your livelihood, it is your family, it is your legacy. And the third thing, any individual that has a business, that has assets, should consider an umbrella liability policy. That is a policy that literally sits as an umbrella on top of everything else you have And that one time where, let's say, look, the things that keep me up at night, right, are not how I'm going to run my business. I run a good business. They're not who I'm going to hire, who I'm going to fire. They are what happens if one day I'm in a bad car accident and it's my fault. I don't know. We all make mistakes. And I've got a good vehicle insurance policy, right? But what if I kill someone by accident? What if it's a family of 4, a beautiful family, and we're both going fast and we hit each other and they die? First of all, I have an obligation to them as a human to make sure that they're compensated for, and there's no way financially to compensate for the loss of a life, right? But I have an obligation to make sure they're taken care of. They're going to leave a family member behind. They've lost that support. So on a human level, I should have that umbrella policy anyway. But beyond that, that is the claim that is going to take me out, because in any state, your liability policy is what it is. And once it's maxed out, your insurance company gets to wipe their hands. They will tender the entire amount, walk away, and let you deal with the fallout, right? You can have $1 million liability policy, and if the damages are bad enough from that accident, your insurance company will write $1 million check, send it to the other side, tell you you're screwed, and walk away, and they will still sue you for everything you have left. So that's why you need an umbrella liability policy. And they're cheap.
Makes sense.
Dirt cheap.
Really good advice. I love it. Like when I buy my cars or even homes, I literally, everyone is bought in a different LLC. And then I have an umbrella policy for every one of those LLCs. So like, only the asset is owned by the actual LLC. And I don't know, I'm not an attorney. It's not legal advice. It's just, I'm doing everything I can to try to protect myself. Cause like you said, there's a million things that can happen. Somebody can take my car and go kill somebody in my car, right? And then I still have the same fallout you did, even if I did nothing wrong. I mean, there's all kinds of circumstances like where things like that can happen, right? Remember a maid when I grew up, she fell and hurt herself cleaning one of our neighbor's house, right? And sued them for that. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff completely out of your control that can come out of the blue.
No, exactly. And umbrella policies are surprisingly cheap because you have all this other insurance underneath it. So it's priced knowing that it's really a rainy day kind of situation.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be used probably in the entire time of your life. So you're listening to me being like, well, you're an idiot. Why would I pay $1,000 a year for something that I'm never going to use during my entire life? Because it's going to save your life the one time it comes up.
Yeah. Great advice today. Galen, where can everybody go to be able to learn more on the preventative side, choosing the right policy, preventing this from happening, doing the right thing, getting help before they actually need it, and just more information on what we talked about today?
So if you're on social media, we're on social media. Insurance Claim HQ is basically our handle on everything. And then our website has a ton of videos, ton of info on it, insuranceclaimhq.com.
Cool. Thanks for coming on with me today.
Thanks, Ty. It's great.
All right. So listen, if you're listening or watching this, what Galen said at the very end really should be powerful to you, because if you really talk to people, if you really look, like the most devastating things that, like he said, will absolutely take you out in this world financially are like health, like major health crisis and the cost of that, or something like this where something happens and all of a sudden it exceeds the insurance coverage you have, or your insurance coverage won't even cover you. And then all of a sudden it bankrupts you and then some. If the rest of your life you're financially ruined. I'm not saying that with any kind of drama. Like you look it up. Like I said, in my experience, the insurance side that he's talking about and the health side of things, those are the two that will financially just be devastating. And also, as he said, it doesn't cost a lot of money to do things the right way, to do a little bit of research, to have somebody help you in the beginning of these processes cost you minimal amount compared to what you can lose. And that's kind of how I look at life is, what do you stand to lose? What do you stand to gain? And in this situation, it's a no-brainer. Like what you stand to gain is like, significantly more than what you stand to lose, but just by getting the protections and help you need. And as Galen said, insuranceclaimhq.com, insuranceclaimhq.com, tons of great information there that dives deeper into this topic than what we talked about today. Plus you can access their social links right there as well. So make sure you visit insuranceclaimhq.com, get the right protections that you need, be able to fight insurance fraud before it even occurs. And if you are a victim, then be able to talk to Galen and his team to be able to get resolution as well. So make sure you visit insuranceclaimhq.com. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.